morning and welcome to Fit Chat, Chit Chat. I'm your hostess, Devondrea Sanchez, also known as the Fit Therapist, founder, owner, and client of Finding Inner Transformation, where we believe a fit mindset is more than the physical. It is mental, emotional, and of course, it's spiritual. I'm so happy to be here today, this morning, even though it is probably my earliest Fit Chat, but I cannot complain, especially when my guest has gotten up even earlier than me, and she'll have an opportunity to introduce herself here soon. If you are joining us live, please feel free to put your comments, your feedback, and your questions in the chat. If you're watching this in a recording, feel free to put your questions, comments, and feedback in the chat, and we'll make sure we get you to the right person for it to be answered. So let me just tell you, the topic is surviving military marriages. Listen, y'all, we are both surviving and thriving in our marriages right now. Even though we're with either a service member or retired service member, it doesn't matter. The military has molded and shaped a big part of our marriages. And we're here today to talk a little bit about that and hopefully give you some tips at the end of how you can survive and thrive in your military marriage. My guest, as it says, Coach Melissa. I will let her introduce herself, who she is, where she's from, and anything else she wants to share with us. And definitely let us know, Melissa, where you are on Facebook, and we will put that in the chat before we end today. All right.
Well, good morning, beautiful people. It is 5 a.m. here in beautiful Honolulu, Hawaii.
We jealous. We
Yes.
jealous.
It's still dark outside right now.
Yes.
But God is good nevertheless. I was just blessed to get up this morning. Again, as our Fit Chat coach said, I am Coach Melissa McGill. I am a certified wife coach. I am just a military wife, and I've been a military wife for about 36 years now. Sometimes you lose count.
Listen. Yes.
Sometimes you lose count. I am happily married. My husband is still active duty military, go Navy. My son is also military, go Navy again. And I have 3 other beautiful adult children. So I have been doing this military life now for a minute. And let me tell you, it comes with hills, mountains, sometimes flat land, sometimes curves, sometimes detours.
Yes.
But I can say it is a beautiful adventure. You just have to look at it with that kind of mindset.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's beautiful. Thank you for the intro. We mad. She in Hawaii, y'all. However, let me just say that was one of the benefits of the military. My husband went to RIMPAC. I think that might have been 2012, 2011. We only had to pay for one ticket to go out there. So when they pulled in Honolulu, I flew out and got to meet them. So there's some perks of the military. And I think that, it brings me to the first question is sometimes I think people get a misunderstanding about the military family and the perks. Right. And I hear that often. Well, you guys get discounts and you get to go shop on base and you get to have all these things, almost as if it is a trade-off for not having your partner home.
Right.
Or division of a family.
Yeah.
Talk to me about, when people say things like, well, you guys get all of these perks, it's not as if we should be complaining.
Right.
Is that a myth? And, how do we debunk that?
Well, one of the things that I always share with civilian family members that say things like that is my husband pays the cost. It's not free. It is not free. He pays the cost. It comes out of his benefits. And yes, I may be getting those things, reaping what they see as the benefits of it, but most of the time he's not here with me. I'm here by myself. Or, when the kids were small, it's just me and the children. So it's not a trade-off. And I have to tell them, you're looking at it from an outsider's perspective. Imagine you're going a whole year without seeing your husband, but yes, you get to shop at the commissary, which, by the way, isn't always the cheapest way to shop.
Can you please? Amen. Amen.
You
That
know, you have to weigh your options. You have to be very mindful when it comes to things like finances, like shopping at the commissary or shopping at the PX or the NEX. You
yeah.
have to really weigh your options. Is it cheaper to get this, or is it cheaper to order subscribe and save with Amazon?
Right. Right. And you made a very good point is he's paying the cost and the family's paying the cost.
Absolutely.
And neither one will out the surcharge. Okay, the tax free that you think we get is not worth not
It's not.
having a family member home. And I want to say that some of the other perks as well, you know, we're often doing by ourselves. And
Yes.
so, especially when, as you mentioned, when the kids are a lot younger, and I definitely know the
Yeah.
difference between the early deployments where it was still about mom, still, it's kind of
Right.
like, where's dad? But as they
Right.
got to a level of understanding and the questions got harder to answer,
Hmm.
um, that isn't a trade off,
Right.
and we're left the
Right.
person that's not obviously just you know
Right.
wives clearly, but it is husbands too that are left behind to kind of answer some of those things. So the perks,
Absolutely.
yeah, yeah, there's no
And so one of the other things that I always share with people about being here in Hawaii. So I've been here in Hawaii 2.5 years. My
mm,
husband has been here for about 5 months because he's been
mm,
deployed most of the time that I've been here. So yes, I'm on a beautiful island and it's sunny every day, there's rainbows, but my husband hasn't been here.
yeah,
So it's like I can't
yeah,
really fully enjoy it because I'm here
hmm,
alone. And I'm an empty nester now, so my kids haven't been here. So
right,
basically, yeah. So in these 2.5 years, he's been here. He's home now. Thank God he just got back.
yeah,
But for the 2.5 years, it's been maybe 5 months for him.
wow,
So it's like, how can you
yeah.
enjoy this beautiful island when your husband is out still serving the country?
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember when we were stationed in South Carolina from San Diego,
Hmm.
which is my home base, and that's where we met. And he literally had an opportunity to get me home, our
Hmm.
new home in South Carolina, and then he left for school for three
Right.
months in Virginia.
Right.
And God bless him because I was homesick, sick from San Diego. Okay,
Right.
and I'm on this whole like my contact, my people, my
Right.
help, my external support was 3,000 miles away, and so he literally drove down from school almost every weekend. That was from Virginia to South Carolina,
Yeah.
just to stay
Yeah.
one day to turn right back around for
Yeah.
those 3 months until he finally started, and we'll get into that a little bit, is his
Mhm.
workups to prepare him for deployment.
Right.
But so you mentioned, you know, being at this thing for a long time, 30 something years.
Yes.
And would you say, and I see Joni, thank you for joining us. I think you mentioned the last bit chat that you're also a military spouse. So please chime in your experiences. Um, do you think there is a difference from when you were, say, younger,
Mhm.
less seasoned military spouse with learning the culture versus where you are today as a military spouse?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. So, for one thing, time and technology has changed.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
for example, when my husband entered military, we didn't have Facebook. We didn't
Yes.
have YouTube. We didn't have
No.
Instagram, Snapchat, all of that. We
Right.
had we had we still had telephones and of course pen and paper. So communication was even harder. You had to wait for a letter or you had to sit by the landline phone, not a cell phone, the
Yes.
landline phone
Yes.
and wait for a phone call.
Hmm.
So unlike today, you have all this technology and ways of keeping in contact, some kind of effective communication, even when they're deployed.
Yes.
Another thing is the mindset, the mindset of us as spouses. when we're younger.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes we enter into a military marriage with a fixed mindset. Like, this is how we heard it's supposed to be, and this is what we're expecting it to be,
Yes.
rather than having a growth mindset saying, let me see how I can benefit from this marriage and make myself grow while waiting, for my husband while he's deployed, or waiting while he's in school. So the mindset is actually different too.
Mm-hmm.
However, that doesn't mean that it gets better when you're a seasoned spouse, because sometimes, and I know a lot of these seasoned spouse come in. For example, I worked at a school in Japan, which, by the way, we were stationed in Japan 10 long years. So
Woo.
anyway, I worked at a school where some of the spouses that married into the military were teachers. They were
Mm-hmm.
teachers in the United States. They married into the military as a seasoned spouse, sort
Mm-hmm.
of. However, when they got to Japan, being a teacher, it's like, I should be able to just get a job. No, not the case. Now you're a spouse and you're competing with other spouses, and it doesn't matter what skill set you had. You're
Yeah.
competing with another spouse. So now
Yeah.
we have all of these certified teachers, doctors, lawyers that are now in a spouse position that can't even work in their field. So it feels like they had to be uprooted. They had to give up something in order to have this military lifestyle.
Yeah.
So again, it's not, you got to look at the perspective of it.
Yeah.
And yes, sometimes when you're seasoned, you may be able to handle things a little bit more, but also resentment can set in. I mean, because
Mm-hmm.
it happened to me. It happened to me. I had to give up a whole career,
Mm-hmm.
when I
Yeah.
moved to Japan. And I had never been told no for a job, or I'd never been told, well, you got to compete with another
Mm-hmm.
spouse who's not even qualified.
Right.
So a lot of times resentment sets in.
Yeah.
Now, don't get me wrong, sometimes coming in as a younger spouse, you are, you're anxious, you're, kind of more energetic. So there are things that, there are advantages. But also, as coming in as a seasoned spouse, you're like, I shouldn't have to do this again. I
Mm-hmm.
shouldn't have to keep giving up, or being or I didn't wait to get married to be by myself. You hear
Yeah.
that a lot.
Mm-hmm.
You hear that a lot.
Yeah.
So the mindset is definitely different. But it's not to say that it's all bad.
Yeah.
There are advantages of coming in as a seasoned spouse too as you get older, because okay, my husband's deployed. Well, while he's deployed, let me work on some personal development. Let me see if
Yes.
I can, the first time that when we were overseas and my husband deployed for a long time, like probably over a year, I said, I need to do something. So I started writing books.
Okay.
Yeah, so I became a
Nice.
published author. I wrote 10 books. Yes,
Sis
because
wasn't
I'm like,
playing with you.
right, right. So I'm like, I can't sit here and do nothing. I
Yeah.
have to do something with my time. But that's what I mean about the personal development.
Yes.
And so
Absolutely.
that is something that I try to share with spouses now is when your husband's not there, that is the perfect time to work on you and
Yeah.
your children. We
Yeah.
don't want to forget the children and your children, but that is the perfect time because your focus can shift. There's a
Yeah.
paradigm shift that happens.
Yes.
Work on you. Work. What is it that you like? What are your aspirations? And
Yes.
if you're a young spouse and you don't know, that's the perfect time to find out.
Amen.
When you're there
Yes.
by yourself. Yeah.
Oh, Coach Melissa just dropped all kind of little bombs and nuggets on us, and I think that's good for those that are watching or will watch
Mhm.
because
Yeah.
I was the young 22-year-old, and my
Hmm.
husband wasn't not only just in the military, he was in Navy SEAL training, which
Yes.
has its share of a whole different mindset of
Right.
the service member. And there's some other layers attached to special
Hmm.
operations training. And so I didn't know. And I think that's what was missing for me at 22, not being raised in the military culture. My stepfather was in the military, but before
Right.
him and my mom met. And so I had like literally no mentor, no one to tell me what you're telling people right now is learn
Right.
to work on you, find something, establish yourself, get out there. And so I had some expectations, I think, for my husband. I know I did. And some of
Right.
those expectations was beyond his control. Why are you
Absolutely.
coming home late? I thought you got off at 10. He's like, look, if there's a missing anything on a jet,
Yeah.
nobody's going home.
Right.
It doesn't work like you clock in at 8 to 5. And I could not wrap my brain around that because
Right.
if days mean you get off at 5 or
Right.
and we've been through them all, days, mids, nights, they say that I was having that expectation.
Hmm.
And unlike, I don't know what your husband, but he don't like talking on the phone. So getting them calls before Facebooks and Instagrams and
Yes.
I wasn't expecting one. I was waiting on that good email, and you better hope there was a connection at some point because there was not. And so, having to really, the word that comes to me is adaptation,
Yeah.
is the ability to adapt,
Yeah.
to accept and adapt.
Hmm.
And yes, I see where people say the resentment part. I don't remember having that, but what I do remember is going after jobs and people wondering if you were going to stay and that being a risk.
Yes.
They
Yes.
don't want to, I'm not going to say everyone, but it is a thing about hiring military spouses. They
Yes.
want you, they know you're a hard worker, they want you to come in because you're used to a structured life for the most part. But will you stay? And am I going to
Yes.
invest in you for you to eventually leave in 3 years or 4 years?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you do experience that, especially in the United States. When you get overseas, they expect you to leave. So they've come
Right.
up with what they call the NTE, not to extend, where
Ah,
you're going to have a job only for 2 years or it's only
gotcha.
for 3 years because that benefits them. But in the
Mhm.
mainland, like you said, it is that are you going to stay? And they're not allowed to actually ask that, but
I know they don't,
yeah,
but they're
yeah.
thinking it, and we know that. And
Right.
if they hire you and how comfortable they are with you, they may
Mhm.
slide it in. But
Yeah.
even my husband's on here said between the beginnings of 2006 and 2007,
Mhm.
and he was only home for 10 weeks total. So,
Right.
which
Right.
you know, I think for me, I came in because I was so young. So sometimes when you talk about that growth mindset, which we should have over every area of our life,
Right.
but
Absolutely.
biologically at 22, when some of these wives are getting married at 18, 19,
Yeah. Yeah.
biologically, it's not even fully developed till 25 is
Yeah.
that mind. So now
Yeah.
we're up against, nature versus nurture and who's nurturing
Absolutely.
those things.
Absolutely.
I had nobody nurturing that. It was
Right.
literally you got married, here come the baby,
Mhm.
and here come the move.
Right.
We got orders not long after, and for us or for myself, it definitely was. My mom was very sick, and so leaving her in the middle of an illness,
Mhm.
because we had to, was not, did not make me feel good.
Right.
It wasn't a resentment toward my husband; it was the military.
Yeah. Yeah. The
It was like
military. Right.
they're doing this, or when they extended a 7 month deployment turned into almost 9 month deployment. It's the
Right.
military,
Yeah.
right? And so, just even those elements that we talk about that are beyond our control, can you have a growth mindset around that? Can you still work on yourself in the middle of resentment and bitterness?
Well, what I encourage young wives to do, or young spouses, mainly wives, because that's what I deal with, um, is they have to find a support system. That is so important. And I know lots of times wives come in and say, "Well, I don't do females. I'm not, I don't do good with friends with females." And
Yeah,
I'll be like,
I know.
"Sister," I tell them, "Sister, you need your support system. I understand that you're saying you don't do well with, other females in sisterhood, but you really need a support system because no matter where you go, you're going to need that. you're going to need that connection to other people, because I heard you say, just like when you first got married, you were taken away from your home to, a totally new place. So was I. And
Yeah.
I was like, okay, what is this? I need my people, because
Yeah.
I'm here with no one. So I had to learn to be able to trust, not trust them with everything, like you don't pour everything, but I had to trust enough to build a support system for my own sanity,
Yeah.
because I knew I could not do it alone. So,
Very
and the
good.
way to do that, you connect in that military community, get involved, volunteer, go, be part of the FRG, connect,
Yeah.
build those relationships, because you have to have that support system.
That's
Um,
so good. Yes.
yeah.
Just real quick, Joni says, yes, my
Mhm.
resume was a hopscotch of jobs and it often hurt opportunities. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hi, Phoenix Rising. I'm not even sure who's that, but hey. But I would tell you, that's so true. I didn't do that when I was
Mhm.
home.
Right.
I didn't need to do it because I
Right.
was home. I had cousins, I had my brothers, I had
Mhm.
mom, I had my people. So I never went to any of the, I never went to any of those things. I never
Right.
went to the FRG. I never went to find out who the ombudsman was. I never did any of those things. Fast forward, we get to South Carolina, and this is nothing but God. Literally, we go into a new housing development. We didn't stay on base. I
Right.
just couldn't deal with it. We were, because at that time my husband was stationed on a Marine base
Mhm.
in Beaufort, South Carolina. So we lived about 30, 40 minutes away. And when he left and went to school, he met this guy named Matt. Well, Matt says, "Hey, we moved into the same area. Now they are in Virginia, in the sitting in the
Right.
same class." Said my wife and 1 year old, they're twins, lived. Or we fast forward, we lived around the corner.
Oh,
We were around
wow.
the same age. Me and his wife. We both. I had a 1 year old. She had the twin 1 year olds, and then a 4 year old. So we became very close. So once again, I still never really went to the FRG because now I found the support right in my community.
Right. Mhm.
But as God would have it, my mom's illness got progressed, and
Right.
I started finding out, going to the FRGs, like who's the ombudsman, because now they're doing the workups. And for those that don't know what workups are, it's when they leave in and out, in and out. Most wives will tell you we prefer the deployments than the detachment workups because we know they're gone. They're gone. When they do the workups, they
Right.
may be gone for 2 weeks, come home for a month, maybe gone for another 3 weeks, come
Mhm.
home. And it's this ebb and flow constantly of an emotional roller coaster.
Yes.
And so we'll talk about that. But I met my ombudsman and started going. I really didn't still connect with some of the other
Mhm.
women, but I
Mhm.
knew who was there.
Right.
And I didn't know how much I was going to need my ombudsman until the day I was there with my mom. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Awesome. Well, part two, little technical difficulties. Okay. Hi, Sarita. Thank you for joining. Oh, Joni, that might have been me that lost connection, not you. Well, either way, where I picked up off was the ombudsman for my husband's command was amazing. She literally, I mean, I couldn't have picked a better ombudsman in my time of need. She literally, I got on the phone, she got Red Cross. They got my husband from Korea to LA by the next morning.
Awesome. That is awesome.
Literally. My mom ended up passing that evening. He was there to be picked up first thing in the morning, and they gave him almost 2 weeks to be home.
That is
And
awesome.
for some people, 2 weeks, that's it, in the middle of, grieving. And, unfortunately, and fortunately, I took what I could get.
Right. That's valuable time.
It was.
Yeah, that's
And
very
so,
valuable time.
yeah, was it rough going back to a home with a
Mhm.
toddler, a 1-year-old and a
Right.
3-year-old, and a husband on deployment? Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But this goes back to why you talk about the connections and support system being so important,
Yes.
so valuable. And if you are young or seasoned, find out where other spouses are at, or your ombudsman, or
Yes.
who's in the command. Find a couple people.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And also, let me just encourage spouses, when you're looking for your support system, please pray and ask God to lead you to
Mm,
the right connections too. Because you don't want to connect with naysayers. You don't want to connect with the people that only has bad stories, because
yes.
that connection could also change your mindset
Yes.
to where now your husband has been deployed and he's just been, working, but now you're hearing stories about, well, this is what they do when they're deployed, and now you're thinking that, and
Yes.
that's not even happening. So please be mindful and pray and ask God to lead you to your tribe. um, I was an ombudsman too for 5 years,
Mm,
and longer. And one of the things that I tried to do as the ombudsman was to build those relationships, because I knew how important it was.
mhm.
Um, of course, as an ombudsman, you're just the liaison between the command, not just, but you're the liaison between the command and the families. But I wanted to be more than that. I wanted to, again, be part of that support system.
Yeah.
And fortunately for me, and give all glory to God, He allowed me to build those relationships, which is why I kept getting extended as the ombudsman until I couldn't be ombudsman anymore because of my husband ranking up. But then, even when my husband ranked up, I became part of the CST, which is the command spouse team,
Hmm. Hmm.
because again, I still wanted to build those relationships. And the main reason I wanted to do that, because I understood what it was like to come in and not have anybody, to come in and you're having, you're young, you don't know what's going on. You don't know some of these acronyms, like what are
Right.
they talking about? so,
Yes. Yes.
so, I wanted to be that voice of reason for younger spouses, and not just younger spouses, but spouses that didn't know, that didn't have
Yeah.
that support system.
Yeah.
And that is still my mission even now. Dealing with some of the wives that I deal with, 99% of them are military spouses, and it's the same thing. I'm there, because I want you to know you're not alone. I want you to understand that yes, we've all kind of been through unique and different circumstances, but you don't have to go through this alone. And I also want to be that positive voice.
Yes.
There is beautiful things that can come with a military marriage. We're gonna have some challenges. Like I said, it's curves and hills, and sometimes it's a detour,
Yes.
but it can still be a beautiful adventure.
Yes.
So I want them to see the positive side of it, and the benefits of what you can do for personal development. when you're by yourself,
Yeah,
things like that.
that's
Yes, I just,
beautiful.
yeah.
Yeah, and I'll get make sure we give Coach Melissa's contact on Facebook, especially if you are a military spouse, military wife in particular, because I have met some beautiful women and
Yeah.
people along the way, and some I still hold true. And so, uh,
Right.
Phoenix Rising, I'm not sure if you're still on here, but she was one that I feel like I had a chance to support and her to support me and our husbands during our time. And being a little bit more seasoned spouse comes with its perks of being able to pour back into the younger ones because we understand how that could be difficult. We I won't get here today, and maybe I'll have Coach Melissa back on at some point so we can kind of talk about that pre, mid, and post deployment syndrome
Mhm.
that all the families go through. There
Yes.
is phases, believe it or not, and
Yeah.
but she did mention, which I think was valuable, is what you can do during the mid part of that
Yeah.
phase and,
Yeah.
and work up to at the beginning.
Right. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I do want to talk real quickly, and I think this is important because as I am also a member in Coach Melissa's Wife Talk group on Facebook, I noticed, not that I'm scaling, but there's
Mhm.
a rhythm of, I don't know if I can do this, right?
Mhm.
Whether it's because he's gone or where I really feel like this is where my kind of expertise in being a therapist is the mental health part of it. When I
Mhm.
think about military having a higher divorce rate than the United States, just anybody civilian sector, not by much. I think we were at 31% versus 29%. And they talked about why, and I want to kind of name some of those things and then highlight a couple things and have Coach Melissa chime in. It says not only the difficult and adjustment of reconnecting after being apart, but also other issues such as money,
Mhm.
infidelity,
Yeah.
children, alcohol, and physical abuse that increases the divorce rate amongst military personnel. Well, when I hear that, that sounds like everybody. That sounds like
Right.
civilian or military. I'm like,
Yeah.
the only difference is maybe we doing some of this by ourselves or not.
Right.
But I want to touch on they didn't really say it, but these are underlying currents of mental
Right.
health issues, right?
Yes.
Lack of communication issues. Um, Especially when we've been told, and it's still today as I run the veterans support group in my county,
Yeah.
we can't go to mental health for fear of not ranking
Mhm.
up, for
Right.
fear of being ostracized, for fear of being booted out. And that's
Right.
always been. So we have our service members bleeding in their
Mhm.
marriages, in their
Right.
relationships, in their parenting. So then they go to these things: the infidelity, the alcohol, the physical abuse, avoidance, and these other things that are honestly ways of coping if we really want to
Absolutely.
get to it. And so,
Absolutely.
what's your thoughts about just when they speak about these issues that are plaguing the military service member?
Well, I always say, first of all, like with deployments are challenging not just for the spouse, but they're challenging for the sponsor as well. And I think sometimes as spouses, they forget that. They forget that that's the sponsor is, dealing with so many different components of just being deployed. Um, or whether it's a TDY or a TAD or whatever it is, when they're away from home, they are dealing with different components.
Yes.
So, and as I mentioned, my husband just recently got back from a deployment. So we are in the reintegration
Yes.
phase.
Yes.
And people think, oh, well, you've been married a while, but it doesn't get any better. As a matter of fact, it can make it worse because now we both are, we're both seasoned. We both kind of have our
Mhm.
own set of expectations. So, but one of the things that I try to share with others is give him time, you
Yes.
know, because you don't know what they've seen while they're away. You don't know
Yes.
what they experience. And vice versa, they don't know everything that you're going through, but also, they need time. Let them decompress. Effective communication. It's so important. I talk about that all the time. Don't assume, ask. And again, you have to be careful what kind of information you're taking in, because one of the things that I know a lot of the military spouses here is that all military men cheat when they're on deployment. This is so not true.
And no,
Infidelity is a thing, but not all of them cheat. Not
correct,
all of them are even thinking about that.
correct.
Um, so that is something else too.
Yeah,
And also PTSD, those things are very real, very valid. And you have to know the signs. You have to know the signs. You have to, watch the little indicators. And I get that. Yeah, we don't want to go to the MTF or the military treatment
please.
facility
Mm,
because, now it's going to be in his record. Okay. And I get that. And I know that this has been a thing for years and years and years. But find you an outsource.
yeah,
um, use Military One Source and all these other free resources that can link you with other providers that's not at a military treatment facility. And I
yes.
know this to be true because I have utilized uh,
Hmm.
Military One Source myself. But
Yes.
nowadays, you have so many options out there. You can do therapy on your phone,
Yep.
you know.
Yes.
So
And have. Yes.
yeah, and have. So utilize those resources that are available to you to try to get some mental health help, because
Yes.
that is important. And again, like I said, the effective communication is very important. You have to be able to have conversations um in order to avoid some of these things that we know are leads to divorce.
Yeah.
And also too, again, you have to, know what kind of expectations to take on, what kind of conversations you're getting from other people, because sometimes those conversations can lead to disruption in your home. So you
Amen.
have to be mindful of that as well.
Yes.
But also, it is important for us as spouses to also be mindful of our own mental health. If you're in my group and I'm always talking about self-care,
Mm,
because self-care is so important. And I don't mean self-care about just going get a manicure, pedicure, and get your hair done. Self-care is much more than that. And I know we don't have a whole lot of time to talk about emotional intelligence and all of those
mm,
things, but
right.
self-care starts with, getting your mind right.
Yeah.
What is it that I need? Am I overreacting? Because how can I control my emotions so where I'm not overreacting? Because he's supposed to be here at 5 and now it's 5:41.
Right.
Because because we can, because they are military. Time is nothing to them. I mean, as we know, anything could happen and 5 turn into 5 tomorrow morning.
Yeah.
So we have to be able to control those emotions. And in order to do that, we need self care as well. We need self care. We need to, be mindful of the things that trigger us as well.
Yeah.
Because there are things that still trigger me as a seasoned spouse. And I'm like, whoa, where did that just come from?
Uh-huh.
you
Absolutely.
know?
Yes. You made a lot of great points, and we don't have a whole lot of time, but I want to
Mhm.
say, um, getting educated about what those signs were, I mean, is fundamental
Yes,
because, and you may not know that at 20 as a
right,
married wife with 2 kids already, and your husband's an
right,
E2, right? I mean, you may
right.
not know that. Um, and effective communication, I can tell you, was not part of our regular onslaught. And then
Hmm.
recognizing you still bringing in your own trauma and triggers
Yeah,
from your childhood and what you've seen in a marriage, those things highly impact your ability to really get through those rocky hills and mountains
yeah.
that you talked about.
Hmm. Yeah,
Communication in my house early in was, how was your day? And before I could answer, he moved on because that's how
right,
work was. So
right.
effective communication, especially us women, when
Mhm,
we really desire to have that kind of emotional connection,
mhm.
and part of that is compartmentalized for our service members because they
Right,
still got to go out and execute a job. And but it goes back to when I talked about adaptation and acceptance. And if you can do that during this period
right.
and do the work in between as much as you can, then you can have a thriving marriage full of communication, full of your own personal attributes and collective goals, all in the same.
Absolutely.
It can be done. And so we are running out of time, but I want you to give our audience two things
Mhm.
two things that you think is important to surviving and thriving a military marriage. What would you give them? And I know this is not, you probably got 10, 20 of them, but I want to make sure we give them something tangible they can leave with, two things that have helped you or helped others that have survived and thrived in this military marriage.
Well, the one thing that, of course, I mentioned, self-care. You gotta have that. And if you don't know what self-care is, then, find a therapist.
Uh-huh.
Find someone that can actually tell you about self-care and how important it is, because it's hard to care for your sponsor and you're not caring for yourself.
Amen.
So self-care is the number one. Number two is perspective. Um, you got to be able to put things in perspective. You got to be able to say, okay, this is going on, but what is the reason for this? And what I mean is, like, the example about my husband's supposed to be home at 5, and now it's almost 6 o'clock. Let's put that in perspective. He's in the military. The mission could have changed. Something at work, God forbid, just one thing goes awry. Everybody's staying here. Nobody's going home, because we know that happens. So put things in perspective. Take time for some self-reflection and say, okay, is what is happening here? Because those things are really going to be beneficial to a thriving marriage.
Hmm.
Um, when you put things in perspective rather than just, jumping off the handle, like, I just don't understand why you say you was coming home at 5 o'clock and now it's 6.
Hmm.
Put them in perspective.
Yeah.
Um, and know that there's just more than one way of doing things. Military lifestyle is unique. It is
It
very unique. There's no I mean, even though they say there's a set schedule, there's really not.
Right. Amen
It's
to
really
that.
not. Yeah.
Yes, I love that. I love that. Self
Yeah.
care, and that again is beyond the manis and petties. It is
Yes.
regular. Regular. That's how I talk about it. Is regular time for yourself. And what does
Yes.
that look like? That's not. It's for some people. It's sitting in the bathroom and not having a 2-year-old put fingers underneath the door. Okay, trying
Absolutely.
to get to mama.
Absolutely.
It could be taking a bath instead of a shower, something you can do for
Yes.
yourself every single day.
Yes.
And
Yes.
then I'm going to give my 2 cents is, honing in on what Coach Melissa said earlier was finding a support group,
Yes.
finding a tribe. Even if you may only got one person in your tribe,
Mhm.
I had an amazing sushi date, sister that I met, and then we got very close. And then even Phoenix Rising, that's on there, we got very close. And
Mhm.
so again, there are people that are looking for people like you. And so I want to have Coach Melissa tell us where we can find you on Facebook or Instagram or wherever your
Sure.
social media platform is.
Okay, so the first place that you can find me is my Wife Talk Military group, and it is called Wife Talk Military. And so that's that's the number one group, and then the number two group is my personal coaching group, which is called KIP, which stands for Keep It Positive. KIP Wife Coach Melissa, and that's on Facebook as well. So both groups are on Facebook.
Thank you. So if you are looking to extend those connections, please find her, whether you are currently a military spouse or your husband has served, because my husband has been retired 5 years now, y'all. Uh,
Yes.
uh, and my husband is chiming in. He said, when I retired, we retired because I couldn't have done it without my spouse. She wasn't afforded the opportunity to stay in a consistent job to retire. Amen. And he did do that.
Amen.
He said, we both are
Amen.
retiring. So, amen. So for those that are looking for more topics on all things health on Fit Chat, Chit Chat, that's what we talk about. This is all about health. This is relational health. is spiritual and mental, because they're all included. And so find me on YouTube at the Fit Therapist. Find me on social media at Fit Therapist. And if you would like to be on Fit Chat Chit Chat, email me at fitchatchitchat@gmail.com. We would love to have you. Thank you all for tuning in. I can't apologize for technical difficulties. It is what it is. Thank you for hanging in there. Thank you, Coach Melissa, for being up at such early morning. I mean, 4 some in the morning to get on and give you guys these, as Joni call them, these gems. We just thank you, thank you, thank you. And feel free to reach out if you have any questions or comments. We love you. God bless you. And hang in there, y'all. It is all
Yes.
well.
Yes.
Take
Be
care.
blessed.
Thank you.